They're back. In the last week, I can't remember exactly which day, but it was last week, Pete Rose and 15 others were officially reinstated from the ineligible list for Major League Baseball. They were banned for life for various offenses, and now they are back and not banned for life. Now, nobody on this list is currently living, so by the technical letter of the rule, that is Rule 21, or at least Rule 21 in Pete Rose's case, which is the one that has to do with gambling. And most of these things do have to do with gambling. There's a few outliers, but most of them do. It does say lifetime. And if you're outside of that lifetime, should we still be banned? But I don't think that's the question. I know that this was a conversation that was a hot topic, this past week, and a lot of people gave their opinions on it. But I do my show every Monday. And so God forbid any big news comes out on Monday evening or Tuesday, because then we got to wait 5 days or 6 days for me to talk about it. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about who's been reinstated and try to maybe figure out why now, because there are some weird extenuating circumstances when it comes to all this stuff. And then I'm going to end up by giving you my opinion on, now that they are eligible again, who should go to the Hall of Fame and what information should we take into account when we're making that decision. So that's Pete Rose, and this is Reinstated. So as we know, Pete Rose reinstated. A lot of people were asking, why now? Like, he passed away 8 months ago. Why didn't we do this during his life? But it just so happens the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, decided to pardon him. Now, that raises, honestly, so many questions that I couldn't get into all of them. Like, I don't really know. I didn't know that Donald Trump even watched baseball. So that was a little bit, it's kind of out of nowhere. Also, you don't have to pardon somebody who wasn't legally in trouble either. So he didn't really need that either. So that was also confusing. But those two things aside, there was a pardon and a conversation between Donald and Mr. Trump and Rob Manfred. And here we are, right? So just to refresh your memory, and I'm going to refresh your memory on not only Mr. Rose, but also everyone else on this list, why they were banned in the first place. Pete Rose got caught in 1989, great year, my birth year. Basically, he got a lifetime ban for betting on baseball when he was the manager of the Reds at the time, most of which was on his own team. Now, he says it was all on his own team. It doesn't really matter at this point. Betting is betting, and you can't really do any of that. And it is explicitly said in Rule 21 in the rule book that you will receive a lifetime ban, and there is no gray area here. It's actually so clear, in fact, that in spring training, I heard this over a dozen times. In spring training, every team has someone on the staff. It used to be the GM or the owner even, and then over the years, it kind of just like got trickled down the old ladder until it got to like an intern, and they have to stand up in front of everyone in the clubhouse in big league spring training and read the rule word for word. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should have gotten the rule. It is really long though, so I don't really want to bore you guys, but you can look it up. You can look it up on the internet. Rule 21 is very explicit, and he, for all intents and purposes, just broke the rule. Like, it's pretty clear. Then we have the 1919 Black Sox, famously led by Shoeless Joe Jackson. A lot of people actually assume Shoeless Joe led the throwing of the World Series during that time, but in reality, he was just their best player. You don't get a nickname like Shoeless Joe if you're not absolutely nasty on the field. Okay, so he's just he was the star of the team at the time. But of those 8 men that were banned, there was Shoeless Joe Jackson. There was Eddie Cicotte, a star pitcher who confessed to being part of it, who was maybe the pitcher version of Shoeless Joe. Then we have Claude Lefty Williams, another pitcher. Then we have Chick Gandil. You're going to notice something with these names. We don't have names like this anymore. We need to bring them back. All right, playa? We got Swede Risberg, Fred McMullen, Happy Feisch, and Buck Weaver. I might have said Feisch's last name, right? That looks like Feisch. Felsch? No, Felsch, not Feisch, Felsch, who was an outfielder. They all just kind of were like, yeah, let's do this thing. It turns out that Shoeless Joe was asking for a certain amount of money and wasn't only made a lower amount of money. We could go all, hey, owners should just pay their players more. Maybe they don't throw the World Series, but I think that's neither here nor there for this. But those 8 men are now reinstated. The other individuals included are Gene Paulette. He was banned in 1921 for allegedly accepting gifts from gamblers and associating with them during his playing career. It's accepting bribes, more or less gambling. Then there was Benny Koff. He was an outfielder also banned in 1921 after being acquitted for grand theft auto theft charges. He was acquitted, so I don't know if that means he didn't steal a car, but the MLB was like, you know what? We don't want people like you around, so they banned him. Then we have Phil Douglas, a pitcher banned the next year for writing a letter expressing willingness to leave his team to help them lose the pennant race, which is odd. He wrote a letter. There's receipt. It's like writing a text to me like, yeah, dude, I totally quit so my team would not win the pennant. That must have been associated with gambling as well. We have Jimmy O'Connell, banned in 1924 for attempting to bribe an opposing player to throw games. Yikes. And then we have, who else? We have Cozy Dolan, great name. Coach banned alongside O'Connell in 24 for his involvement in the bribery attempt. So they both tried to get bribes. A coach was involved. And then we have Willie D. Cox. At the time, he's the owner of the Phillies, and he was actively betting on baseball in 1943, not knowing that it was illegal, which is probably why everyone has to listen to Rule 21 now. So William D. Cox, or as I call him, Willie D. All right. So we had an owner actually betting, which is crazy. So now all these players presumably are available to go into the major leagues. All these guys are presumably available to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. All right. Now, I don't really know, especially when it comes to the old school crew, how that's going to work, if that's like the Veterans Committee or what have you. But it is what it is. So I guess we'll have to wait and see next year how they put them on the ballot. But what I want to talk about, and by the way, we have all these people's names. So let's just go through the list of these guys because these are great. I love these pictures too. So this right here, this is Benny Koff. This right here is Phil Douglas. I love that guy. He looks a little bit like Babe Ruth. We got Jimmy O'Connell right here. Good looking man. Cozy Dolan right there. And that's Willie D. That's Willie D. Cox right there. That guy looks like a Willie D. Cox, I'll be honest. I don't know what that means. But what I really want to talk about is Pete Rose, because Pete Rose is the hit leader all time in the major leagues. Now, I am about to have a hot take, so everyone buckle up and hold on tight. Make sure you're sitting down, please. I would appreciate that. I think that had Ichiro come over to the major leagues at 20, he would be our all-time hit leader. Just saying. Take with that what you will. Pete Rose is the greatest hitter of all time, though. He is. So, we got that out of our... We're good? Okay, we're good. But let's talk a little bit about Pete, because this is Pete doing an interview, being asked about the allegations. Okay? He seems like, me? I did it? It's interesting because, yeah, he did. So let's go through what happened with Pete Rose, because a lot of people just like, oh yeah, he bet on baseball. But there's a lot more to this story, and I want to give you all the details, all right? So he was accused of betting on MLB games, including those involving his own team, the Cincinnati Reds, as he was serving as manager. This is 1989. This is how the whole thing planned out. Then Commissioner Bartlett Giamatti, that's Paul Giamatti, maybe they're related. Bartlett Giamatti commissioned an investigation by lawyer John M. Dowd, not to be confused with John Dowd from one of the greatest baseball games ever played or ever made, MVP Baseball 2005. This was actually Barry Bonds. This is Barry didn't want to be included with all licensing. He thought that his likeness was worth more money, and so we had John Dowd, and I think his name's John Dowd for a little bit of a reason. Possibly. I don't know. It seems a little bit kind of on the nose that's the same name of the guy who caught Pete Rose.
I just want to say, before Arena Club, if you were trying to very actively buy, sell, trade, it was very complicated and used a lot of mail that was unnecessary.
Yeah, I didn't even know how to do it, but I'm glad we have Arena Club now because it's a one-stop shop for everything card related.
It is, and right now you can get 20% off your first slab pack or your first card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FOUL. Use code FOUL. If you're a collector, you've got to check out Arena Club. Go get after it.
Anyway, do with that with what you will. And it was called the Dowd Report, which detailed Rose's betting activities. On August 23rd, 1989, Rose agreed to a settlement that included a lifetime ban from baseball. So he agreed. He agreed to it, though he never admitted that he did it, but he agreed to take the ban. Now that seems like those aren't really mutually exclusive. They're kind of connected, but it is what it is. And then 15 years later, when he released a book called My Prison Without Bars, then he admitted that he did it. So 15 years later is when the actual, okay, yeah, I bet on baseball, and he happened to do it when he released a book that was presumably paying him. So that makes, I mean, using a bombshell like that or that juicy little nugget of information and getting some money out of it, I don't fully blame him for that. But there is more. So Pete Rose, this is the only thing that's ever happened with Pete Rose, and this is where I'm going to get into whether or not I believe, or if I were a voter for the Hall of Fame, these things would come into play when I'm talking about it. All right. There's 1990. He was charged with filing false income tax returns, so tax evasion. The next year, he was charged with tax evasion, failing to report income from autograph signings and memorabilia sales. He was convicted. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 5 months in prison, fined $50,000, and did 1,000 hours of community service. So this is the next year. He got arrested and sentenced for tax evasion. Then, in 2017, there was an allegation from a woman that alleged that he had a sexual relationship with her in the 70s when she was 14 or 15 years old. He acknowledged the relationship but claimed he thought she was 16, which was the legal age of consent at the time. Now, this is not something I want to talk about a lot. It just needs to be mentioned as part of the legacy of Pete, because that is part of it. That did happen. He admitted that it happened. Whether or not you agree with it or not, I mean, I don't think a lot of you probably do, but I'm going to leave it there. But that also happened, okay? That also happened. So let me just touch on a few things. I want to talk a little bit about what the Hall of Fame is and what it represents, what it means. Like why is the Hall of Fame such a big deal? And the biggest thing is a museum. It's a chronicle of everything that's happened, good or bad or indifferent, in Major League Baseball and how the game has become what it is today. All the best players are there, or should be, presumably. But it is being used or wielded as a consequence for bad behavior as a player. Okay, we know there's several guys being left out for either convictions for steroids or suspensions for steroids or allegations around steroids. Some guys have gotten in. That's getting a little bit muddy, and that's going to be a conversation we're going to have louder and louder and louder over the next few years, I'm sure. But in my opinion, or the way I feel, what the Hall of Fame is for is, as a player going into the Hall of Fame, especially while you're still living, it is a club. It is a way for you to continue to give back to the game and receive from the game, which I like. I like because baseball's careers end, and it is a good thing that players can continue using that status later in life to either compensate themselves and give back to the game and be a presence. I think that's a good thing, right? But the question is, what lines do we draw at recognition, and what standards do we hold to the people as human beings to allow them in as a player that is being recognized for their body of work? Of course, I am in a very, very touchy part of this story But what does it mean, and what do I think? I think that integrity and honesty matter. Even taking out what happened, right? Even taking out the betting and the tax evasion and the questionable relationship. It was the lying, I think, that would probably put me into the no category, right? It's that, all of that, plus one last thing that happened very recently during the Shohei Ohtani, Ipe Mizuhara, his translator stealing money and doing all this stuff. Pete Rose put out a video that it certainly looked like it was in a casino type of place, which just happens to be ironic. I don't know that for certain, though. That's allegedly. Let me just be very clear there. But he was in a social setting and said, man, I wish I had an interpreter or I would have gotten away with it. And that was just in poor taste, big time for me. And also, he admitted to doing the thing, so let's not make jokes about it because you did it. Like, at no point did there feel like there was much remorse. And at no point did it feel like there was much thoughtfulness or willingness to change it all. And also, there was in 2016, when Rob Manfred took over as commissioner, he was asked to be reinstated. He was then asked, do you still bet on baseball? And he said yes. So the behavior never changed. So if the behavior never changed, then you just don't get that opportunity back just because it's been a long time, in my opinion. Now, we'll see in the next few years whether or not he deserves it, but that's just important to me, and people will show what's important to them when they make their votes. And let's be very clear here. Just because I don't think that should happen at this point, I still recognize him as the hits leader. And I think that's a stupid argument that's made a lot. Like, yeah, but he's got 4,100 hits. Okay, cool. He has 4,100 hits. His name is still the top name on the hits list, but he doesn't need to be inducted to be, for that record to count, he doesn't need to be inducted. He's still the hits leader. That's fine. Just maybe we don't recognize all the other stuff. That's my opinion, and it is. Where's the line? And also the circumstances around this are just weird. And it feels almost like, oh, this person did this thing, admitted to doing this thing, and we got to let him off the hook just because. I don't really understand where this came from or why it is the way it is. And that's just my take. But was he the greatest hitter of all time? At this moment, yeah. Yes, he was. And I don't think those two things can both exist, where he doesn't. It's just not a place he gets to be, but he also was still the greatest hitter of all time. It's just the way it is.